Welcome to another great day where we get to talk about Monster Hunter. And today I want to talk about Monster Hunter Wilds, possibly for the last time for a while. Wilds has finished its content cycle, the final title update is out. I'm not expecting much more except a few new event quests here and there, and it's about that time to, even though I'm a little late, move on to Monster Hunter Stories 3. So, since I'm not expecting to really hear any more Wilds news or anything about the Master Rank expansion for a few months, I don't know how much more there would be to say for now, except what I want to see in this Master Rank expansion. And that's the focus of today's video. 10 things that I would really like to see in the Wilds Master Rank expansion. So, with perhaps the shortest intro I've done up to this point and not wanting to waste too much time, I want to get right to it. And the number 10 thing is a new Lagiacrus type area. I really liked Lagiacrus's cave and his whole underwater segment, and was almost expecting something similar with Seregio since they both came out in the same title update. But I understand that Lagiacrus is a really popular monster, so they really went all out with it, but it also shows me how much they could do with some of these returning monsters, or even just new monsters, the big deal monsters, the showcase monsters, and I hope we get more of that. I hope we get more unique Raging Brachydios, Lagiacrus type fights where we have these set pieces that's not so much scripted, because I don't want an on rails fight, but to give these fights a little bit more gravity and to make them more interesting. I'd even throw the new Gogmazios fight into that. You know, creating monsters that have good fight mechanics, that have good movesets, is always been a big part of Monster Hunter, but I would love if we see more of these fights that have the fight be crafted in such a way that it feels more unique than just fighting a monster, especially, like I said, for the more big deal monsters. So, the number 9 thing that I would really love to see is a bunch of really crazy new skills. There's been a lot of talk about the amount of power our player has at the end of high rank in Wilds, and it's true, you can get nearly every offensive skill you could want on your hunter now. What would be the incentive unless the monsters hit so much harder and you just need to remake the same armor? What is going to make our sets not look the same near the end of master rank as they do now? And frankly, even though you want strong skills, you want to be strong, just sliding in weakness exploit and crit boost and maximum might and resentment and counter-strike and agitator, it gets kind of boring. So what I'd like to see is much more unique and out there skills, and for inspiration I look at Monster Hunter Now, the mobile game. There are a lot of skills in Monster Hunter Now that I haven't seen in Monster Hunter before, unique skills that really increase your power for pretty niche playstyles, such as giving you big boosts in raw attack or elemental attack if you already max out attack or whatever element attack skill that you have, or giving huge increases in damage for negative affinity hits, or one of the most fun skills, the reflect skill, that does a huge amount of damage to the monster proportional to how hard they hit you when you block their attack. To be a mobile game, you would think it would be so limited, but Monster Hunter Now actually gives you a lot of options for playstyles, and to me, way more options for playstyles, builds that you can effectively build around than the base game does. The base game may give you some skills that you could use as alternatives, but they're almost never as strong as the meta. And it's not even that it's the meta, it's, for some of the weapons, feels like it's not even close. The skills you quote unquote should have, and the other skills that are an option but are just nowhere near as strong. So, the number 8 thing that I'd like to see is maps that aren't designed for secret auto traveling. I really find that the maps in Wilds are one of the weakest aspects of it. There's really no exploration in the maps, and I think that's because the fact that you can autopilot on your secret at any time The developers didn't expect people to want to run around and look in caves and look around corners and crawl under things, so none of that's there. But I really miss that aspect of Monster Hunter. Even for Iceborne and Sunbreak to have such different types of maps, there was still so much exploration, and there was reasons to explore. There was the paw swap, treasure hunts, there was looking for lore, secrets, and Sunbreak, and I really wish we had something like that in Wilds. The whole seamless hunting where you finish a quest but you stay outside of the camp and you stay in the wilds. I just wish there was a little bit more to do when you were out there in the wilds, except just hunt the next closest monster. So I really hope whatever new maps that they add in the expansion are maps that are a little more geared towards exploration and are a little more interesting. I mean, the maps in Wilds are gorgeous and conceptually they're very interesting. They're just not very interesting to exist in as the player. So, moving along, number 7, in an attempt to not make this a 30-minute video, the next thing I'd really love to see are more technical fights. Something like Omega. I really liked Omega's fight. He had very clearly defined moves, and they were punishing, and they would come back to back, and you would really be hurt, or cart, if you messed up even once or twice. And I really like that fight design. I dislike the design of just taking already difficult monsters and increasing their star level, making them hit harder, move faster, less openings. For a challenge quest, that's fine, but for the enjoyment of hunting a monster, it's not my favorite. I really think that we might have went a little too far in one direction, moving from the older style, 4th gen and before monsters where they were very mechanical, they had very predefined move sets. It was very obvious what those move sets were. They moved a little more like programmed creatures and a little less like living, breathing monsters, something that's been changing ever since World. But one thing that I think has come with that change is for certain monsters, and not all of them, you lose that enjoyment of learning the monster's moveset and feeling like you fight it well. Wilds has multiple monsters that, especially at their highest 10 and 9 star incarnations, it's just a matter of, for me anyway, extra ranks of evade window for dual blades, extra ranks of guard and guard up for sword and shield or heavy bowgun, blocking right in time instead of really learning and engaging with the monster's move sets. I mean, obviously, all monster attacks have tells, but so much of the hardest fights seem to come down to run in, hit, run away, or staying close but dodge or block at the perfect moment. Weird to say, right? That's all monster fights, so it's odd to try to explain what it is about fights like that that feels so unsatisfying compared to something like Omega. Or to even use an even older example, 4th gen Shagru Magala, which is one of my favorite fights. A fight that's very engaging and doesn't feel like the monster is ever just flailing at you or doing attacks near you, but always trying to attack you. Maybe that's the difference. There's so many monsters that seem to be so wild, which I get the point, but so frantic in their movements, so all over the place with their ranges of attacks, they don't feel like they're really trying to hit you, and they're more so damaging areas with their big sweeps and pounces. And I like the fight design that feels more like a one-on-one fight. And I'll just end it there, because I don't know if I've explained it as well as I'd like to, and maybe I can't just yet. Maybe I should have gave that another second. But anyway, moving on. Kind of keeping in line with that last point, my number 6 thing that I'd like to see are more crossover fights. Going back to Omega, I think one of the things that made the fight so good is because he fought so much like a non-typical monster. And I really like how much the monsters in Monster Hunter fight like creatures, despite everything I just said in my last point. But to have Omega not fight like a creature was refreshing, and it did require new approaches. It required using skills I didn't normally use. It required thinking about the fight in a new way, and I hope that that's not the one crossover monster we get in the Wilds expansion. Really love to have just a few more fights that felt a little out of the ordinary. So, halfway through the list, the number five thing that I would really like to see is some kind of new aspect to combat. Something akin to hunter skills, hunter arts, or switch skills, which I would love to see them. I sincerely doubt it, but I also hope we don't get something that's just a one-off mechanic like the clutch call was for Iceborne. And I don't know why I keep wanting to say iceberg, so I keep hesitating, but Iceborne. While the fighting in Wilds does feel great, after a few hundred hours, it does begin to feel a little samey, especially with the most powerful monsters. They kind of put you in a box to have to engage with them a specific way. I would love something like Switch Skills. I'd love Switch Skills back, honestly, from Sunbreak. But something like Switch Skills that gave you more variety, more options, just like I was saying with the regular skills, armor skills, something that gave you new ways of playing instead of making you kind of get narrower and narrower into using your chosen weapon in the one way that'll work for fights on this level. One idea that I had, because World and Iceborne had a lot of moves you could use with slinger bursts, using your slinger ammo, dumping it all out all at once, making it part of your move set. Something like the gun lance, where you could load your slinger ammo, and now the next time you use wormstake cannon, you leave an explosive device stuck in the monster that does an extra pop of damage every time you would shell it. Something like that I thought was really cool and interesting, and I would love to see something like that but applied to other weapons. Maybe loading your switch axe with slinger ammo and then instantly activating savage axe mode when you wanted to, or maybe giving your switch axe an element change for a short period of time depending on what kind of slinger ammo you loaded. Or maybe taking one of your slinger ammo's elements and applying it to one of your two dual blades. So now your dual blades have dual elements, even though it has a weaker second element for a short period of time. Something like that I just think would be really fun, and I would love to see something in the Master Rank expansion that just kind of switches up and gives a little more variety to the weapons. Now, the number four thing that I would really love to see is a weirder monsters. I feel like to be in the mainline Monster Hunter series, same with World, they play it pretty safe with having this be the serious, the cool, the stylish Monster Hunter. They've taken out a lot of the humor and a lot of the wackiness from Monster Hunter, which I think is a shame, and I definitely think is going to return in the next handheld game. And I think they've done the same thing with the monster designs where, and this is just my thinking, that maybe because this is supposed to be the more mainstream game that is really not catering to, but considering newer Monster Hunter players, we're not getting the more out there aspects of the series that we could. So I would love to see some of the wackier or sillier monsters. I would love to see wackier and sillier characters and side quests and everything else, but definitely I would love to see some of the monsters that weren't just the cool monsters. And don't get me wrong, I love cool monsters. I love Tigrex and Astalos and Zamtrios, some of the most, if you wanted to make a cool monster, this is what monster you make monsters. But I also would love if they just randomly threw Kurapeko in the Master Rank expansion for no reason. And I love that Gypsaros and Yonkaku don't flail around quite as much as they used to, because there's nothing like getting knocked down by a monster that looks like it's running like a chicken with its head cut off. That kind of makes you just a little bit more mad. So I do not miss those aspects of them, but Gypsaros, Yonkaku, Kongalala, don't they all just feel a little less silly, a little less funny than they used to? So, moving right along, the number three thing that I would really love to see is better use of endemic life and environmental traps. I said this before in my 5 best and 5 worst things about Wilds, but I really love the way endemic life was used in Sunbreak. Not just the ones you could pick up, but the way you could use certain environmental traps. It really made the fights moving to certain areas feel more impactful. Going back to the world style of having a couple of paratoads or nitrotoads on one spot on the floor, or one spot where a monster is standing under stalactites or boulders. For the most part, they stand near the traps that much. There's a few exceptions, like being in Wyveria. If you're on the lower levels and a guardian monster goes to heal, it goes to that one pool that's right under a rock that can fall. So yeah, that's a pretty good one. You're gonna get that most of the time. But so many other times, trying to lure the monster to one spot so you could drop something on its head, it's also a pretty good chance unless you put a trap down too, which feels like a waste because that's 2 stuns that you're using at once. Uh, you could get knocked away and the monster could stop short of where you pull the thing down on it, or you pull it down, but because you zoom in so much when you do, the monster was actually not quite under it. It just doesn't feel like it gets used as much as it could. And especially the toads. You can kick a toad and all of a sudden the monster stops short to do some kind of mid-range attack at you, or knocks you away from the toad and continues to charge past it. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I really don't even try to use most of the environmental traps, and I think that that's a shame. I mean, they're there, they're clearly meant to be used. I wish it was designed in such a way. And no, I don't want the monster to just always stand right under it. That would feel very unnatural. But at the same time, going back to Omega, for example, I did that fight how many times, and how much time did I spend trying to lure it under the one trap so I could drop it on its head, and it just would not go under it? Or how many times have I stood next to some paratoads in the Windward Plains and the monster just doesn't come near it? Or when it does, it hits me or knocks me to the side without really getting in the path of the toad. It just doesn't feel as good to use, or even try to use, as I think it could. Oh, not to mention Gemma and Werner being hunter assistants out in the map, often nowhere near where the monster I'm fighting ever goes to try to use one of their trap gadgets. It's all kind of a good concept, but I could see the whole system being revamped in a much more beneficial way to the hunter, where it actually feels impactful and useful to try to use some of these environmental aspects. So, the number 2 thing that I would like to see, and I might actually make this less than a 20-minute video, is I would love to see extinct species. The Guardians were interesting, and when I first finished Wilds, I did kind of wish that we had gotten 1 or 2 more, but that's only because I'm always going to want more monsters. But I don't know how excited I would be if we got 3 or 4 more Guardians in the next game. I mean, this game we got Guardians, we got Tempered, we got Frenzied monsters, but none of them felt quite as impactful as I feel like they could have. And I really like the Guardian monsters. I really like Guardian Rathalos' fight. It's probably one of my favorite fights in the game. But we've already had Arkveld go from a Guardian to a new monster, an extinct monster that has been revived because its Guardian version, became a real boy. I would love to see more of that. I would love to see kind of like origin species from Frontiers, monsters that were extinct, precursors, shared ancestors to current monsters, but now we get to see their ancient forms. I just think that would be really interesting, and I feel like all of the aspects of setting that up is already in place, so why not? And the number 1 thing that I would really like to see, and I guess I should have said at the beginning of this video that none of this was in any particular order, so this is not the thing I'd most like to see, but the last thing on the list that I'd like to see is a new monster type. As I said, I don't necessarily want to see a bunch of new Guardian monsters. An interesting concept, but for example, Guardian Rathalos, I did think his fight was better and more interesting because the Wilk could explode when he used his fire element on it. I don't know off the top of my head how many more monster fights could be improved by just adding elemental explosions. Maybe quite a few. Maybe I haven't really thought of any, but it just doesn't seem like the most interesting mechanic to me unless they kind of revamped the Guardians and made their fight combat a little more deep. But one of my biggest difficulties in Wilds was the end game of the star system. Also mentioned in my 5 favorite and 5 least favorite things about Wilds. I did not love the star system. Certain monsters have a perfect sweet spot from low rank to high rank to master rank. Usually it's the master rank version. A few times it might be the high rank version, but most monsters have a sweet spot with how hard they hit, how fast they move, how short the openings are in their attacks to feel like a very well crafted fight. And I don't like the star system of let's just make them hit harder, let's just make them move faster, let's just give them fewer openings. Let's just make them feel a little more wild and hectic, because I feel like for most monsters, once you get to the 9, 10 star range, and some even at the 8 star range, you've missed the sweet spot of a really fun, challenging fight to just a bit overtuned. And overtuned doesn't mean undoable. Overtuned doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. But for example, the 10 star Arch-Tempered Archveld fight. It was a very fun experience, and I kept thinking if this was the last boss, which it kind of was, of Wilds, and this was the last boss fight, this would be good. This is not something I necessarily want to farm. I did it a couple of times, I got its full armor set, but this isn't something I want to farm for RNG materials. Especially materials that I can get, even though in a lower quantity, in easier fights. 9 star Duna, 8 star Ray Dow, to me, felt like really good sweet spots for these fights. Doing 10 star Duna, I'm like, yeah, this is doable. I've done it once. I can think of no reason why I'd want to do it again. I already had all the Arch-Tempered Duna armor sets. I didn't really need any of the materials. I did it for the challenge, kind of like with the old advanced quests. I might do it once for the challenge, but it's not on the level of fun where I'd want to do it over and over and over again for RNG materials. Maybe if there was some kind of separate in-game progression, maybe for a guaranteed amount of some item, and that item you could use to make the strongest decorations or something like that. That would be worth doing these fights 5, 6, 7 times, and then moving on to the next 10 star that you want to do 5, 6, 7 times because you want whatever decorations, best decorations you can get from whatever materials that fight gives you. And this is also because I didn't love the Gogma Ardian RNG system. It's very unsatisfying to do hours of fights to get materials to do multiple rolls to still possibly not get anything that not the best stats or the best skills, but skills you don't even want, skills you wouldn't even use. They're not even useful to you. You can't even say, oh, this is good enough. Anyway, rolling it back, went a little bit on a rant there. I would love to see some new type of monster, something like the Afflicted in Sunbreak, or even the Deviant monster grind. Yes, they did get progressively stronger in Generations Ultimate, but there was an endpoint. And you were fighting unique monsters. I want to see some new type of monster with some new type of mechanic for the end game that makes you engage with it in a different way. I really don't want the end game of Wilds to be, let's take the 6th strongest monsters and you have to fight them at the 15 star level.